Right, so with Murder Drones coming to an end and episode 8 releasing tomorrow, many fans of the series are undoubtedly going to turn to fan comics, stories, and animations to fill the void left by the show. But which of these projects are worth watching and which are a waste of your time? That's what I've set out to learn by finding some well-known and top-quality ones and putting them all into one place. Let's explore the Murder Drones multiverse. First up on our list is the fan project that has made the rounds across several different channels, all of whom I'm going to claim copy the idea from my post. It's the Murder Drones Intermission, made by Ghoul in Fuchsia. This animatic is by far the biggest collection of talent across the fandom, including Animator Thing, Xander Russell, Ghost, and Tomato Sauce. Yeah, that tomato sauce. The episode itself is structured much in the same way as an actual episode of Murder Drones would be, and the timeline is set between cabin fever and home. Fresh off the back of her performance as Jason, Uzi is now choosing to try and work with the wings stuck on her back, and asks NNV to teach her how to fly. Hold on just a second. This is where I'm going to politely ask all of you to go and watch this project and any of the other projects I'm going to talk about before watching the rest of this video. These people have put a lot of effort into these AUs, and I'm not about to ruin your experience with any of them by me being a cynical asshole. You have been warned. Flying training with these three goes about as smoothly as you'd expect it to go, and Uzi takes her time in figuring the whole thing out. However, she does eventually manage to get some control and navigates a course relatively easily. It's at this point, however, she finds herself flying through the episode 4 bus, somehow, and gets some PTSD, which activates the solver. N and V once again prove completely useless at the one thing they're designed for and nearly get killed, but Uzi eventually regains some consciousness and flies away to mope. N and V both set out after her, with N looking to help her and V looking to kill. V finds Uzi first because the plot says so, but gets some PTSD of her own and ends up trying to help Uzi out, and N finds them together after some bonding and letting the credits roll. Intermission accomplishes a few things that the main show has been severely lacking throughout its lifetime. First off, it slows down the pacing. Liam has always written the show to be lightning fast, especially in the back half of the season, and while that's not necessarily a bad thing, it does cut the audience's time with each character down and limits their development. Having a slower pace while still keeping in some of those high octane moments is what I actually expected out of Home going into it, boy was I wrong, and as a mid-season buffer before all the craziness of the show's back half, it works very well. The other thing I really like out of it is how it sets up the rest of the season. The more obvious example of this was the foreshadowing towards episode 5 and V's condition in it, which has been mostly glossed over in the actual show. In Home itself, she only serves as a minor obstacle, and it's a great way to give her some more impact. The less obvious example is it fixes one of the problems me and the boys had with her death in episode 6, the fact that there wasn't much build up to it, especially to her placement of trust in Uzi. Creating a more personal connection with her now explains how V was willing to go through the events of Home to begin with and why she was ready to sacrifice herself. But this episode is not perfect, despite what Yagster would have you believe. From a technical standpoint, the animatic style of the episode can be hard to follow, especially in the faster scenes. The voice acting and dialogue is also a little sloppy, and you can tell at times that there wasn't professional direction for any of the actors. This is a particular problem of the opening, which I still skip past on rewatches. But overall, Intermission is a very solid product, and I'd be happy to include it in my own headcanon. Now onto the next recent release that's been blowing up on YouTube, Opal Online's My Immortal. Taking place post-finale, My Immortal makes the not-so-bold prediction that Uzi will end up dead at the end of the show and explores what would happen after that, assuming that the Absolute Solver is still around. The take we get here is basically N becoming about as suicidal as the average Silksong fan right now and trying his best to off himself. That is until Tessa, who is still alive in this universe, tells him about the thousands of copies of himself scattered all throughout the galaxy which make him functionally immortal. Roll credits. N decides that he's had enough of this and leaves before stumbling across another drone with some nice purple hair. A few short minutes violating the laws of robotics later, and these two are off to a refuge for drones that is somewhere. Yeah, I can't really tell you the full story because I don't have one. There are only 2 parts currently out on YouTube, and from what I can tell, this is going to be a long story, but I'll review what we have so far. My Immortal really puts the alternate in alternate universe here, which is one of its most common criticisms. It turns N's character from a happy-go-lucky optimist into a suicidal pessimist with little hope for the future. Now, this isn't necessarily always a bad thing. Hell, the whole reason AUs exist is to explore the what-ifs of a show, hopefully in a better fashion than what Marvel did, and if there were any event that would flip N on a dime like this, it would be the death of Uzi. We've seen how emotional we can get over a loss like this with V, which is actually a very impressive prediction on behalf of the writer. That being said, I'm still of the opinion that we've taken this just a little too far from the original here. I've got no problem with the sadness, the moping, leaving Tessa and Jay behind, but the constant suicide attempts are maybe a bit much. That's not to say I don't like this comic though. It's still well written, well drawn, it's well voice acted, and it's come up with some very interesting character dynamics that have had plenty of potential, and I would definitely recommend staying in touch with this series. Another one from the comic sector, we have the famous Insanity, the one that actually shows up first when you look up Murder Drones Drones comic. Unfortunately destined to share a name with this god-awful rap group, it follows a similar vein to My Immortal, with Uzi getting killed in the first 5 seconds. Only this time, she does it at the end of the pilot. V's unassuming ass then does quite possibly the worst thing you could ever do to a grieving person. Give them a solution and a way to bring them back at the expense of your own life, and giving me a nice dose of nightmare fuel. And rips V's core out without a second thought, once again ending the careers of a large number of Envy shippers that were still present at this point in the series. Damn, we've been doing this for a while. The insanity part of this comic kicks in, and I begin to wonder about the mental state of the author as N commits several violations of the Geneva Convention, torturing V until her inevitable death, saying he feels nothing and that this is just like killing a worker drone. The Corps decides to break to move the plot forward, and N is somehow still not upset by all of this. Jay pulls up again instead of waiting 2 years this time, and without Tessa, remember this was written pre-promining, and gets her ass kicked pretty much instantly, but not before making some sex jokes. And I'm gonna be honest with you, despite the fact that there are 4 more acts and dozens more chapters to this thing, I stopped reading there, because honestly, I'm not a big fan of this. The instant end character change is even more dramatic than in My Immortal, and from there it's just violence without any real thought to the future or a setup for a plot. N goes insane instantly, and even when he gets the thing he wants without really having to struggle for it, it just breaks and he's completely fine. When you do something like that, you completely destroy the audience's investment, because if the character doesn't care about what's going on, then obviously we won't either. There's also the massive inexplicable plot hole with the cores. Apparently worker drones don't need a core to function, but N does need a new one to repair Uzi and bring her back to life. What? Why? That makes no sense. It's like trying to shove some unleaded 95 into a Tesla. You're just going to end up with a mess and not solve anything. Combine all that with the fact that this art looks like it was drawn by my 5-year-old niece, and I'm really not a fan of this comic. Next. This one was requested by a couple people from my community post, and it's Mafia Drones. I'm going to preface this by saying I have once again only read the first chapter of this series. From what I can gather, Mafia Drones covers a scenario where the murder drones are kind of terrible at their jobs, allowing a much greater number of workers to live, including a select mafia group that is very efficient at fighting against them. Instead of forming the worker defense force, Khan works more heavily on the family door business, and manages to get Uzi invested into it as well, though she still favours a more offensive approach and attempts to build her railgun with the hope of presenting it to the Mafia as part of a deal with Doorman Incorporated. The problem is, Uzi is no more effective at making weapons than our True Universe version, but also this time has less accuracy. Frustrated with her lack of success, she chucks the railgun at the floor, causing it to blow up a mansion that housed several disassembly drones. N flies out of the ruin and confronts her while his companions are dying in the background. Now this is how you start a comic. The opening here is familiar to the audience but has immediate changes, most notably with the presence of a fully intact Nori. Uzi's character stays pretty consistent both within the comic itself and the show, and the mix of new and old characters give the audience both a sense of familiarity and understanding, and wonder at what will happen next. The art style here is also lovely. It's clean and well polished, and the outfits perfectly fit the theme. My one criticism here would come from the writing though. I'm not sure if English is Vanille's first language, but there are some pretty obvious grammar mistakes and the language is a little choppy. Apart from that though, I would highly recommend this comic. And there we have it, a small selection of the thousands of pieces of Murder Drones fan content out there that are either good enough for me to recommend, or just popular enough that I can't physically ignore them. And while the show itself may be coming to an end, I think the fandom will manage to stick around for much longer, even if we do end up focusing on different things. But that's all I've got for today. Thank you all for watching, and have a good one. Right guys, thank you for watching the video, I do appreciate it. You might have noticed that this one had a little bit less in the way of editing, enthusiasm, quality, all the things that generally make my videos somewhat watchable. That's because I kinda hate this video in particular. It's taken me so incredibly long to get this thing written, to get it recorded, to get it edited, and it's just been a massive waste of my time. I really don't like it, and that's why I can't be bothered to go back and edit it properly. So sorry about that. It's just, with this thing taking forever, and me constantly delaying it, and having exams, and school ending, and almost getting hacked on Discord, it's not great for the mental health, and this project being constant throughout it, and being lingering on my mind, has just made me come to despise it. So, it's done. I'm not going to watch it again. I'm sorry, it won't happen again. But I put the short up saying I was going to have 3 Murder Drones videos left, and I still plan on doing that. The other 2 videos should hopefully be a little bit better than this one. Thank you for listening to me rant. I'll see you next time.